Hey everybody, Michelle from Seams Like Quilting here, and today we're going to talk about scraps. I have to deal with the scrap bowl. Keep a bowl, it's about the size of a small mixing bowl, at my cutting station here. This is a different project. Actually, I think I'm gonna put that in here so it doesn't get mixed up. So I keep a scrap bowl at the cutting station, and when I'm doing something and generating scraps, they just go right into the bowl. It's the fastest and easiest, and I don't have to deal with the scraps after every single project. But here's the thing, I've been making a lot of shop stuff lately. I've been making a lot of shop samples. I've been making a lot of my own stuff. You know, we've been on break or whatever, and it's gotten a little out of control. So I'm gonna pull it over. Try not to, hold on, I need two hands. Yes, there's a bowl. See the bowl? Yeah, so there's a lot here. Now, there's bigger cuts in here than I normally have. I don't keep the scraps from shop samples. We use those in our scrap bins and stuff at the shop. And then there was one in particular where I got way too much yardage for the sample. I think mom just cut an extra yard or something of the background versus what the pattern said. But in general, this is usually I stop when it's mildly overflowing. So I'm going to deal with this, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I'm going to do here. So I keep scraps in a couple of different ways because I use scraps and I make a lot of scrap quilts. So one of the ways that I keep scraps is my square box of scraps. These are all 2.5 inch squares, and they're all scraps. You can see there's a bunch of white ones. This is tonal, white on white. Then I have kind of black, and then I have solids, and then the rest of these are all prints. I separate the prints from the solids because sometimes when you're making a scrap quilt, you want to do all solids or you want to do all prints, and so I separate them. But this is, when this gets full, which it almost is, there's a little bit of wiggle room left, so I can add some more to it. But when this gets full, it's time to make a couple of postage stamp quilts, which are I basically just make 9 or 16 patch blocks out of the squares on days when I'm kind of, when you want to sew, but you don't want to do anything really hard or think that hard. So that's what I use my squares for, my square scraps. And then I have another section of scraps that are strips. So, and they can be full width, salvage to salvage, or they can be partial strips. I don't really care, but anything in the strip, like a strip of fabric, that's how I keep my scraps. Now, when I have stuff like this left over from a project, where I'll have, it's a good, it's almost a quarter yard, that'll go back into my stash. So anything that's a big enough cut to be able to use in another project, rather than breaking it down into scraps, I'm actually just going to pop this back in the stash. So what I'm actually going to do is go through this giant pile, and I'm going to separate out the stuff that's going to go back to the shop for the scrap collection. That'll go into a single bag, and I'll take that back to the shop when we reopen in the middle of January. And then the stuff that's going to go back into my stash, I see some black yardage in here that's bigger and some things like that. And then I'm going to pull aside the stuff that I'm going to cut into my scraps and put into my scrap stash. And then I'm going to cut and start sorting those. So this is, maybe I'm going to guess an hour or two of kind of scrap sorting. This is something that I tend to do earlier than this. This is a little embarrassing. But really the goal here is to find a scrap management solution that works for you and something that you're going to use. I have discovered that 2.5 inch squares serve me in all kinds of ways. I can use these scraps with, say, a black and white collection of charm packs, or I could use these scraps with, I could just get a solid charm pack, solid white, solid black, and use these scraps. Or I could use these in a round the world or a 10 sisters kind of quilt. Anything that kind of is scrappy. 2.5 inch squares tend to be a good size. I don't like keeping 5-inch squares, 10-inch squares. That's not my jam. Some people do that. And I don't like keeping random scraps in random sizes by color. That's a really popular scrap management method. I struggle with that because so many of my fabrics have so many colors in them that I really struggle with that. That's just never appealed. So I pre-cut into strips and squares and save scraps that way. That makes them more usable for me. Now, other people have different methods, and there's some fantastic methods out there online. And I would never, I mean, you find the method that works for you. The colored scrap thing works for a lot of people. It's just not something that I tried it, and it really, it just didn't work for me. But that doesn't make it bad. It just means it didn't work for me. So I'm going to dig into this and watch some more Stranger Things. When I start cutting and stuff, I will show you what's left in the bowl when I'm done.